This is Kirblog. It's about Dragon Ball. Welcome, everybody. This is the first of hopefully 7 DBZ-related Kirblogs leading up to the premiere of the new Dragon Ball Z movie, Resurrection F, premiering in the U.S. for the first time on April 11th, and I'm going to be going to that. So this is the first of 7 leading up to that weekend. And so before I get into this, and my guest, who is being patiently quiet, I want to give a little thing here to, I'll have some annotations on the screen. I have actually done some Dragon Ball Z related Kirblogs in the past, 4 of which that I recommend to you. The first one is the Tale of the Magical DBZ videotape, which is a little fun story, followed by The Study of Goku, which I did with Takahata 101 from Team 4-Star, Why DBZ Kai Deserves to Be Watched, which I did late last year when it started airing on Adult Swim, and then finally Super DBZ, a hidden gem, which I talked about my favorite DBZ video game with my guest who is here with me now, Mr. Mike Labrie. Say hi, Mike.
It's me, Michael Labrie, also known as Vegito EX, whatever you want to call me. It's all good. What's up, dude?
Well, on that note, actually, I don't even think you really got that much of a proper introduction on the last one that we did together, which must have been like half a year ago at this point.
It was 7 months ago because I just re-listened to it today.
Oh, okay, cool. Yes, I did see that. So we're recording this on like Wednesday, and this will be going up on Saturday. Yeah, so Mike, please tell the internet people out there, especially because I probably have a lot more subscribers now who maybe don't know who you are. Who are you? What do you do? Tell me your secrets.
I have many secrets. Many of them I cannot tell here on this show. My name is Mike. I go by Vegito EX. It's a screen name I came up with when I was 15 years old. That was a long time ago. It's more than half my life ago. So I run a Dragon Ball website with 3 of my best buds in the world. It is called Kanzenshuu. Kanzenshuu. It's a fusion of 2 prior websites. Some of them, and by some of them I mean the 2 of them that you may have heard of, Kanzentai and Dayz EX. And my work online dates back to January 1998 when I launched Vegito EX's Ultimate DBZ links page, and it turned into Vegito EX's homepage, and then Kanzenshuu EX, and here I am so many years later. We run a very, 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 very large established Dragon Ball website. We cover all the news that you would expect, but we dig into massive guides and translations, and been doing a podcast for almost 10 years now, if you can believe it, and that's my life. How are you, Chris?
I'm lovely, and I have been going to Mike's website for a very long time. I'm trying to remember exactly. It was when it was Kanzenshuu. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get into probably the story of that when we delve into the real topic here. But
okay.
I want to give also Mike some extra credit. For those of you who maybe know about this but don't know the connection, Mike is also the helmsman of several infamous Dragon Ball Z related April Fool's jokes from many years ago.
They've been so much fun.
One of which was, I believe it was Emperor Pilaf as a playable character in Dragon Ball Z Ultimate Battle 22. That was the game that I played on.
No,
Continue.
You have it wrong.
No, you didn't do that?
Come on, man.
Oh, you didn't do that? I thought you did do that.
First off, it was Final Bout, and second, it was...
Oh, Final Bout. I'm sorry. Final Bout.
I helped with it, but we actually put that up on... She wasn't my wife at the time. She was my girlfriend at the time. Mary, Temple of Trunks. We put that up on her website for 1 April Fool's.
That's right. Okay. Well, either way, but you were directly involved with it. And then probably more infamously, the April Fool's joke that wasn't the creation of Dragon Ball AF, but it was certainly something that kept people talking about it and being utterly convinced that it was a real thing for a very long time.
Oh, yeah. But by no stretch of the imagination did we come up with AF. I don't think you'll ever be able to track down the original first who said AF is a thing, but it was 2004 that we did that. And we came up with my commercial was so-so, but Julian's print advertisement in full Japanese was pretty spectacular.
And I just love how full circle it is with Time Patrol Trunks. All these
exactly.
It's
Characters
like,
turning
God.
evil. Yep, man. We did it.
And you could say, does Trunks turn evil in Xenoverse?
No, he doesn't. I wish he did, because then we could have sued, but not really.
God, yeah. And also, of course, Vegito EX voices the incredibly important character of Apul in Dragon Ball Z Abridged by Team 4-Star.
That's true. That's a thing that happened.
which Kaiser Neko, our buddy Scott, cast you purely on the sense of you are the biggest Apul fan in the goddamn world.
Yeah. All right. So like the 30-second version of that is I wanted to champion a character who didn't get much exposure, and I was working on a character guide, let's say 12 or 13 years ago that still hasn't seen the light of day. And I get sick of writing long character bios, so I wrote one for a pool. Then I decided he was the best character ever. And then they started actually putting him in video games, and it was kind of horrifying and hilarious to me at the same time.
He and Orlen, whatever, the orange version of him are both in Dragon Ball Z universe.
They are.
Just for you. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer one because thankfully Mike is going to help with extending past my limit of usually being. I'm just blowing the lid off of my entire limitations of only being able to have videos exported that are 20 minutes or so long without having to go beg people for help. But anyway, so this is good because we're going to probably tell some fun stories. So this first topic, which I wanted to kick things off with on this whole 7 Kirblogs of Dragon Ball shit, was I want to talk about the early days of fandom for Dragon Ball in the US. And to start kind of chronologically, because Mike, you were a fan of the series before I discovered it, I want to kind of go chronologically with it and have you tell me like maybe the cliff notes of like, how did you discover the show? And get really, really big into it to the point where you made like the first version of your website and then kind of go from there, and then I'll probably pop in and interrupt you at some point.
By all means, interrupt me. So I would consider myself a second generation fan in North America, both as a fan and as websites, because at the time, if you were a fan, you were running a website. There were so many websites that you basically just did that out of obligation. So I was like sort of aware that the series existed, but not really. I didn't really care. I saw it in the back of Electronic Gaming Monthly, EGM, which was a huge video game magazine at the time. If you would look in the back of the magazines, you would see ads for what were import video game shops, but they were big into anime stuff as well. So they'd have soundtracks, all that kind of stuff. And it was primarily the Super Battle Collection figures that I saw. So it was this long slew of characters with golden hair and then kind of like the exact same character next to him with black hair. I was like, this is kind of dumb. I don't really care. So I was vaguely aware that this thing existed. So then in 1996, I was a freshman in high school. I'm dating myself horribly here. I had a friend who was super, super into comics, like American comics. I believe his favorite series was Spawn that he was reading. So I don't know if it was through comics or through something else, just being into that scene. He caught this really cool cartoon one September morning, and he told me, hey, check out the next episode next week. And I did, which would have been the second episode of Funimation's original syndication TV broadcast of their Dragon Ball Z dub. I forget what the name of that second episode was, but it was, that
was Raditz flying off with Gohan and Goku and Piccolo. Okay, yeah,
right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And here we are in 2015, and look at me now. So that kind of, it was love at first sight kind of thing. I mean, it was the largest obsession that I've probably ever had in my life, immediately stemming from that. I mean, we had start of internet connectivity between our families and stuff, so we were getting online sorta and printing out these terrible black and white dot matrix printer kind of things and trying to learn as much as we could. I thought Krillin was Krillin's father. I didn't know what was going on, what was what.
Wait, no, I got one better for you. I thought Vegito was, because my best friend Mike Lucas, we didn't know shit. He was like, dude, I think Vegeta and Bulma get together and they have a kid and it's Vegito.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't tell. We had no idea. So it was just, I immediately fell in love, and I'm the kind of person where if I fall in love with something, I need to know everything about it. So that just turned into learning that the series was a Japanese cartoon and things were different over there. And it was actually just wrapping up in Japan with Dragon Ball GT in 97. I got my first internet connected computer at the tail end of 97. And by January 98, I started my, as I mentioned before, Vegito EX's Ultimate DBZ links page. Like, it was pretty quick for me.
So going from there, I mean, you started amassing all this knowledge, and then in comes folks like Julian, who's the translator aficionado of this community you guys have built, and then of course Mary, who later went on to be your wife, and she was running Temple of Trunks, the ultimate Trunks fangirl website.
It sure was.
Still never been topped to this day. And
she'll be glad to hear that.
And was it Hujio started Kanzentai?
Yeah, Kanzenshuu started in 2005.
Okay, so that was much later.
Yeah.
So there just became this whole, and I'm trying to remember some of the other ones too back in the day, because I said this on the one with Taka. The first episode of Dragon Ball Z I ever saw, which at the time I was confusing it. I think I was combining Dragon Ball and Double Dragon in my head as the same thing. Like, it was that vague to me. I didn't know shit.
As you are apt to do with those two completely different things.
Of course, completely, yeah. And the first episode I ever saw, and I think I said this on your podcast as well, was the episode with Bulma and the crab on Planet Namek.
Oh, that's right,
the infamous filler episode. It's the first episode I ever saw, but just at the end, her getting held up by, I think it was Blueberry and Raspberry, the two stupid Frieza soldiers. Like, that was enough to be like, ooh, this continues? This show has like an overarching story that like continues into the next episode. That was enough to hook me.
Oh my God, that hooked you. Imagine if you saw something good.
Right? Yeah, I know. And then I just, I would see, this was back when those of you who don't know about this was when Funimation's original run of the what they call the Saiyan Saga and the Namek Saga were running over and over and over, like those 60 episodes or whatever, like just constantly in loop, syndicated on TV. Then eventually it got on Cartoon Network. They had the newer episodes, and then of course, if you guys know my story from the Magical DBZ videotape, I talk about how I discovered the transformation volume of the Frieza Saga tape, and I'm like, oh my God, they're actually fighting Frieza. I had still no context for what was going on. Got into that, etc. And then I was just completely full on hooked with the whole thing. And it was that magical time of like not knowing absolutely everything about like who all the characters were, and and now it's like, I mean, we were joking off camera before of like the preview screening for the new movie is going to be coming out at the end of this month, and I can guarantee the whole plot of the movie is going to be leaked immediately.
Yeah, totally.
In somehow, some way. Yeah, and then I'm trying to remember, and for to pop in other bits and pieces about this.
Well, here's the thing. So that's how we got into the series and how I started working on my website. What else do you want to know about, let's call them the early days, whether that be fandom or online fandom? What about it is interesting or mysterious to you?
Well, okay. Well, this I actually was surprised to find out, because I went back and I listened to all the DBZ Kirblogs I already did. I was surprised to find out that I didn't talk about this. You and I also come back from the days of fan sub VHSs,
right?
Which is a long dead thing now, because why? You can just download everything for free immediately, bootleg everything. Yay! Don't really do that.
Well, it's not even that anymore. I mean, we live in a world where I come home from work Friday and watch the latest episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which had already been up there for a couple hours immediately after its Japanese debut. I mean, we live in the future, and it is glorious.
Yes, thankfully now we also have companies that are being smart enough to combat that for sure. Okay, so we didn't have immediate access to everything, because everything that a normal like casual viewer of the show would be witnessing would just be whatever's on Cartoon Network for the most part, because that's the majority of where the whole show aired. For me, like I wish I could remember like other specific sites that I used to go to, because I would read like episode summaries and like saga summaries of like, this is what happens in the Buu saga and this is what happens in this and this, and just trying to picture in my mind like what the hell any of this was.
Right.
So like so for me, I watched the majority of the entire show either as it was airing on Cartoon Network, or if I would go to a Target or something and stock up, because this was back when Funimation would actually release the VHS tapes of episodes long before they would air on TV. So I was keeping up with the Buu saga and a lot of that stuff like on tape before it was airing. How did you kind of get to know the entire? Did you get to know the entire material of the series before it finished airing on American television? Like, how did you go about that?
Oh, yeah, long before. And that's the thing, for those early days of Dragon Ball fandom, you could not, never mind the first TV series, which had limited subtitles. You could not watch DBZ 1 through 291 in order. Like, it could not be done. Even if you had, for example, like raw tapes, there were certain episodes that, there were only a couple people that were recording episodes on VHS and then even sending them to fan subbers. Mm-hmm. So there's one episode in particular, I think it's episode 250. It's around the time that Gohan is getting his special training from the Elder Kaioshin. That episode just didn't make its way to fan subbers. That episode was always missing on fan sub tapes. And a later thing happened with GT episode 60, which crazily enough was Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta. Like, no one had that episode subtitled for years.
Wow.
Like, whoever was responsible for taping and sending, they forgot to do it that week. So you could not watch the series in order. You had to piece it together from the currently airing dub, from new dub VHS tapes coming out, from fan subs, from reading synopses online. there was no, let me just go to Hulu and binge watch. You could not do that.
And it's interesting too because I'm trying to remember also like specific name. This whole episode, I'm trying to remember this thing. Or no, but there were certain folks who ran sites that like they were either living in Japan or they had access to stuff or whatever. Like there was a guy I remember, I think you guys mentioned him on your podcast, who like was doing like weekly episode summaries of new episodes that were airing of GT like that week in Japan, like they were living there or whatever.
Right. So the person you're talking about, his name was Curtis Hoffman, and he got his claim to fame. He started by doing synopses of entire manga volumes. Like he would buy volume 1 and do an entire synopsis of it. That's where we got a lot of kind of fan names that have really stuck around to this day, like Ultra Super Saiyan
and Mystic Gohan.
I don't know that Mystic came from there. Maybe it did. I can't quite remember if I tracked down the source on that. Yeah, so he was responsible for a lot of that. And yes, he was doing GT episode summaries episode by episode. So that's how we got a lot of the early documentation on what's the name of this episode, when did it air, what happened this episode. So he was, I mean, you look back, he was kind of like the proto what we wanted to be and accomplish and set out to do.
And I think about that because like I was kind of just on like the end of that period of like, you know, because I think by the time that I got into it and I was like really having all this access, you know, of information, is like everybody kind of knew everything because everything was available, you know, just about everything was available. Even, you know, by that point, I think, you know, because by 2001, all of Z had aired and all of it was on a home release. And, you know, Steve Simmons, the longtime translator of the show, who's been working at Funimation all that time now, you know, had done proper translations of everything, so that there was like a real like, this is the show, this is the way it's supposed to be. There's no like misinterpretation shit from anybody, you know, people, because, you know, I'm sure also there were people probably back then being like, oh, this character is actually this thing and this is the brother of this guy, or what, like just nonsense, right. Like just rumors and whatever, you know, let alone shit like AF, which was also popping up. So I guess kind of going back into the story portion of it as well. For me, so my kind of first exposure to, I guess, what you could call the uncut version of DBZ was, strangely enough, something that I know you kind of have a soft spot for, was the Mexican Spanish dub of the show.
Telemundo.
Yes, on Telemundo Sunday mornings. And by the way, I say specifically Mexican Spanish dub because there are, 5 Spanish dubs?
Right, there's the main Spain Spanish dub, but then there's, I think, 4 other dialects over in that area of Europe that all got their own individual separate Spanish dubs.
And then there's the series, and then I think also Kai has a separate cast because they didn't get most of the actors back for that as well.
Right.
Yeah. So I would actually say that the Spanish language production of DBZ is even more complicated than the English language
it
one.
Kinda is.
Which that's fucking saying something.
Yeah, it is. I mean, because you think about, we've got Philippine dubs of certain things, and we've got all these alternate dubs with Ocean and Sister Studios, and the Big Green dub, which our buddy Ryan coined. Well, I think everyone coined it that earlier.
Yeah, just kind of that was kind of a hive mind collective title of that. And we're still waiting for that Ocean dub of Kai to come.
That's out. Right. It's coming any day now.
It's coming. I know it exists. So I would catch. I think I just caught like a frame of Dr. Gero running through the ravine in the Android arc. And I was like, whoa, Dragon Ball Z's on. And I was like, oh, it's the Spanish. Oh, this is the Spanish version of it. Oh, okay, cool. And I noticed immediately that the music was different. Mm-hmm. I guess this must have been a little bit of a rarity to people who just, were so, the version I watch on Toonami, for whatever it is the version that the show is, and I accept nothing else. I loved the music. I loved what I would later find out to be Shunsuke Kikuchi's original music immediately. And I would look forward every morning to singing along to the Spanish version of Chala Hechala, of which I had no idea what the hell he was saying. And funny story too, this is going to tie into my finding your website. So as a youngin', I used to collect a lot of MIDIs on places like VG Music. This was back before getting MP3s was just the easiest thing in the goddamn world. And so I would try to look for MIDIs of Dragon Ball music, but and I couldn't find certain things. Like, for instance, I didn't know what the hell the Japanese opening of the show was called.
Right. So what do you search for?
I just tried looking on like Yahoo or AOL or whatever for like Spanish Dragon Ball Z theme song opening or whatever, and I just couldn't track it down. One day I'm on VG Music or something like that. Or no, I think I found your site, and you had the lyrics section. and I see Chala Headchala, and then I'm like, just suddenly after like, this must have been like a year or two of searching. I just couldn't find this thing. And then I was like, wait a minute. Whatever the hell I was hearing in my head.
Oh, that's Chala.
That thing. That's what it is. So finally I put two and two together, and then I found it. I'm like, this is what I've been searching for all my life. And then of course from there, we got a Power and Bokutachi and all the Japanese themes, And so the main reason I would come to your site for a very long time, it felt like, was to pull up the lyrics while my parents were out and go to the kitchen computer and play my midis and try and sing along with it. I knew that Japanese was a-e-i-o-u, so I just kind of finagled my way to try to do the lyrics. And then like years later when I'd actually get the MP3s, or like I'd hear them on the DVDs or something, I'd be like, oh, that's how you pronounce that word. Oh, that's how it was supposed to sync up with the track or whatever. So my first exposure to Dayzenshuu at the time, Dayzenshuu EX, was the lyrics section was like my little hub on there for ages and ages. And of course, I guess we have Julian to thank for his translations for all those.
Yeah, I'm glad we could service you with lyrics.
And then I'm trying to think of some other stuff as well from kind of around that time. Well, I guess do you have any like other kind of interesting experiences or stories of like, I guess maybe like it's before like Dayzenshuu became kind of the pillar that it is now, because I said this on the last one we did too. It's like, you guys have really earned your keep as like, authoritative. Hey, we know what we're talking about. We know what we're doing. We do our research properly, kind of stuff on when it comes to Dragon Ball. But, when you were still just like, okay, I'm still just like watching the show for what it is. I'm getting into it. I'm seeing these movies for the first time, or these episodes for the first time. Were there any like particular parts where like, I don't know, just like memories of like watching certain movies or episodes with friends or just something like that? Anything like in particular that kind of sticks out to you?
I mean, there's so many. There's just little moments here and there. And of course, one you always have to go back to is when Gohan transforms after 16's head is crushed. There's an insert song there in the Japanese version, Day of Destiny, Spirit versus Spirit. And it's a vocal song that just has this amazing atmosphere to it. And then, you kind of have to say here, in the English dub, Gohan's just yapping. There's no song. Like, it was a completely different experience. And I didn't see that English version for years. I mean, that was we were looking forward to, how's Funimation going to ruin this scene? Like, that's how it was. Because that scene was so moving to so many people. So there was that. And something I was thinking about earlier, this kind of ties into, we were talking about GT and its airing. And so in 1997, GT came to a close. Some of the first tapes I got, like fan sub tapes, were in 1997. A friend and I traded with someone we met in a random chat room online. I got DBZ episodes 94 through 105, something like that. So that would include episode 95, where Goku transforms into a Super Saiyan for the first time. That blew my mind. So many, I knew what I was getting. So it wasn't like, oh my God, this came out of nowhere. Like, we specifically asked for, those are the episodes we want. So that was amazing. But then the next tapes that I ordered all on my own from a legitimate fan sub distributor who's called Capsule Corporation, original name there, was DBZ movies 11 and 12, so Bayer, Broly, and Janemba, the two DBZ TV specials, Bardock and Trunks, and then GT episodes 59, and then, like I was saying earlier, no one had episode 60, so I missed Gogeta, and then 61 through 64. And that would have been, I mean, for the time, a turnaround. Getting a raw tape of something that aired so recently was kind of unheard of. I mean, it was new to them at the time. I just happened to catch them at the right time. They had just gotten them in. So to be able to watch that and know, like, no one has seen this before. This is so incredible. And to this day, for me, the end of GT doesn't have subtitles. And I'm super weirded out when I pop in a Funimation DVD and the end of GT has subtitles on it. Like, that's not supposed to have words on the screen to me.
Oh, God.
It's super weird.
That's something I don't have that. Okay, I'm glad that and Team 4-Star kind of addressed this about and they did their 25 days of DBCember a couple months ago. And I think that you even talked about this maybe once in an episode. There's certain things that we just like don't inherently get because we weren't there, we didn't have that. Like, the biggest one being like, Goku, you're an alien. It's like, I can't fucking imagine what that must have been like for people living in Japan, growing up with either like, how many volumes of the manga by that point? Like 20 something, right?
60.
And then like Okay, 16 volumes of the manga and 150, like 60 episodes of Dragon Ball. Z starts, Goku, you're an alien. It's like, what the, can you even imagine? No, you can't. It's like nobody can. Nobody can imagine what that must be like for anybody.
Right.
It's like impossible. Because even with Kai, with the new kids, getting to experience DBZ for the first time, they're having DBZ. It's right there in the first episode. Goku, you're an alien. Done. Like, you don't have the whole multiple years of history with this is this kid with magical powers who's the savior of the world and blah, blah, blah. You're an alien. It's like, you can't have that. And on a smaller scale, it's like, yeah, I imagine, like, when you're a kid, it's just like, oh, cool, Gohan goes Super Saiyan. You're not even thinking about what you're comparing it to. I remember, like, seeing Gohan go Super Saiyan 2 fighting against Perfect Cell on Toonami, thinking, oh, this is awesome. And, like, then the rest of the fight and him defeating him and everything. And not even thinking about, whatever it was originally, or it just wasn't even in my mind. But yeah, I can't imagine, like, because I know actually, yes, I can imagine, because I had that experience for a good time with shows like One Piece, and also before that with Mega Man NT Warrior, which I used to be hardcore into, or rather Rockman EXE in originally. And, I'd see, like just moments like that where it's like, shut up, please stop, please shut up. Oh my God, you were annoying the crap out of me. Can you be quiet for 2 seconds? Like, I can't imagine, like, seeing that scene, being completely like, this is the coolest goddamn thing ever. And then, no offense, Stephanie Nadolny, 16, you loved life. I'm going to keep talking about how affected I am instead of having any emotional impact whatsoever. It's like, oh, yeah. I look back on that now and I'm just like, oh, no wonder people fucking hated this.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, I hate to bring it up so often lately because it always sounds so demeaning, but in general, a lot older than the target audience remains for Dragon Ball. And so I was watching the series, that specific part of the series, at a point where I already knew what was happening, who these characters were. I wasn't calling him Dr. Gero because I had years of knowing him as Dr. Gero. I wasn't calling him Paikon because I had years of calling him Paikuhan. I really want to stick with Gohan transforming there for a moment because I think this is a great example of not being able to place yourself in a situation where you don't know what you don't know. So you already said, what's Gohan's transformation there? What's it called?
So Super Saiyan 2.
Right, exactly. But you knew that before even seeing it.
No. Okay, technically, no. I didn't. I didn't know that was quote unquote Super Saiyan 2. I just was like, oh, Gohan is doing some kind of like power up, and because he snapped and he's going to fight Cell. No, I didn't have a perception of, oh, that's Super Saiyan 2. No, I didn't have it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's quasi interesting to where I'm going with this. Thanks for not backing me up at all. However,
sorry.
That scene in Japanese, and I mean, there's this terminology in the dub at the time, ascended, where ascended means everything and nothing at the same time. So we all just know that as Super Saiyan 2. Think about it for a second, though. The first time that anyone uses the phrase Super Saiyan 2 is when Goku is describing all of the transformations to Majin Buu. And then we get that Soshite, and this is Super Saiyan 3. So
that's right.
We just had this giant span of chapters where that's not called anything. Gohan just transformed. And so our big question was, so what did people in Japan call it? Was there a name for it? And so we dug back into, there's comic adaptations of the movies and the TV specials. We would call it animanga, where they basically just take screenshots and put them into a manga arrangement with speech bubbles and stuff.
It's redundantly redundant.
Well, the manga of the anime of the manga is. This, at least, for a couple things, like the Bardock special wasn't a manga first, so it's serves some purpose. Anyway, so in the back...
now it is, technically.
So in the back of one of these, actually for the Trunks TV special, happened to come out like really shortly after that aired in the TV version, and it wasn't too long after the manga version. So it wasn't called Super Saiyan 2. In this book, they were describing what we would now call full power Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan 2. They assigned the grade level naming to those forms. So what we know as Super Saiyan Grade 2, which is where they bulk up a little bit, it's Super Vegeta when he fights against second form Cell, and then Super Saiyan Grade 3, which is the one that Trunks really bulks up to and his speed decreases.
And he literally just looks like Broly.
Right, he does. They stuck with that naming convention. And so for a brief period of time, what we now know as Super Saiyan 2 was called Super Saiyan Grade 5.
Yeah, and that is very one of those products of the time. Okay, now we're going to retroactively kind of finagle this to be something for the sake of condensing this so people can get it. The other big one that I think impacted, I never forgot this even all the way back then, was actually the forms of Buu, which it seems like the general consensus that I guess the dub and sort of the Japanese go with is that they call the Fat Buu, quote unquote, is Majin Buu, even though they're all technically Majin Buu. The pink muscular one is Super Buu, and then the short version of him is Kid Buu. Those are the ones that they always like go to specifically, especially because those are the three that generally are the ones that are playable in the video games, which is the most prevalent shit I guess we have. But what I remember was in the on the back of the VHS tapes, they'd have the little episode summaries for the Funimation tapes. The episode where Buu expels the skinny evil Buu from him, and they fight, and then evil Buu absorbs him. I believe now. Okay, help me. Is that when he absorbs fat pink Buu and becomes muscular badass Buu? Is that still technically called Evil Buu, or is that technically called Super Buu?
So,
does anybody even know?
So super is not actually used in Japanese. You want me to give you the rundown of these forms of Buu here?
Well, before you do that, because the point I was going to get to is that they say in that episode summary, Evil Buu absorbs the good Majin Buu and becomes Super Buu. And then many tapes later in the episode where quote-unquote Super Buu absorbs Gotenks and Piccolo and then becomes the form with the nose and the vest and a longer tentacle thing.
Right.
They're like, but then he absorbs Gotenks and Piccolo and becomes Super Buu. And I'm like, then which one is Super Buu, guys? You know?
Right.
So
they didn't know what they were doing. So the first Buu that we see is coined in Japanese Majin Buu Zen. Zen meaning good. And then the skinny gray thing that he pops out later is Majin Buu Junsui Aku, or pure evil. And then when that one eats the big fat one, he turns into Majin Buu Aku, which is just evil. So he's not pure evil anymore because he's brought some of that good into him. And then we're stuck with that Aku one for a little bit. And then the final one that we see is really interesting. Funimation called him Kid Buu, which is really, I mean, it's visual. Maybe you'll call him that. But online, for years, we all called him Chibi Buu. Chibi meaning small, diminutive kind of thing. In Japanese, it's actually Majin Buu Junsui, or just pure or genuine. So you can see how it comes in and out of this pure evil, using words and adding words and then subtracting words to get between all the different things.
Right. And so where here's my question too, because I assumed that the Kid Buu, which Kid Buu, I figured like just that was like people offhandedly translating chibi as kid, which is like, that makes sense, you know, and it's catchy. I like it. But was Super Buu, was that a fan-created thing like Mystic Gohan? Was that something that just came from the internet at the time?
Yeah, I mean, Funimation probably just adapted that from what they were reading online at the time. I mean, it also makes sense.
That's what's so fascinating, though, is like that wasn't a thing, and they just that's what it is now. Mm-hmm. Like it's super. Like everybody sees that in America for the most part. They see that character, and that's Super Buu. They look at all of the different forms of the pink evil muscular one, and all the different variations when he absorbs other characters and becomes an asshole. And they call it Super Buu. That was a fan-created name, and that's in the show canonically, whatever you want to define that as, you know, for the English terminology.
Well, hey, to be fair, it's better branding than calling him Evil Buu, because like evil, does it really mean anything? Is he more evil than the previous ones?
I've heard super evil Majin Buu also, believe it or not, because I think the Canadian guy that voices quote-unquote Super Buu in the Ocean dub of the rest of the show, I believe he identified that because he was all of them except for the Fat Buu, which was Scott McNeil. Brian Dobson, that was his name. Brian Dobson did all of the other forms of Buu except for the fat one, and he acknowledged that one as Super Evil Majin Buu. So maybe that was like the production name that they had like internally for the scripts or something. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But that's what, and then, you know, just recently, or maybe I don't know how recent it was, but somebody discovered that there was a toy they produced of what is technically Ultimate Gohan, which is Gohan, not Super Saiyan form with the Goku outfit when he comes back from the training with Elder Kai.
Right.
Is that was, people called that Mystic Gohan, and there's an official product in America that calls him Mystic Gohan. That's bizarre.
Some dude on a Usenet posting somewhere from a decade prior is owed a royalty check for that, probably.
Yeah. It's so, and I wonder if maybe that also might have been the reason why, like, you know, for those of you who, this is getting super geeky, but like we'd have different names for the different forms of characters and thankfully most of them have kind of like liquidated by this point, but like, you know, we had Sin Shenron and Omega Shenron and Janempa and Janemba and
well, hold on, because
you know,
that's a great one. I do want to talk about the evil dragons there because they're named completely wrong. Like, not even just name them something else. They're named wrong in Funimation's English dub. They're not Shenlongs or Shenrons. They're Shinrons. They are star dragons. He's literally called the 1-star dragon, I Shinron, which is the Japanese approximation of the Chinese. Yeah. And so not only do we have kind of too clever for its own good, all the first letters spell out Shenron, but then over in Europe, I can't remember if it was like the French dub or one of the alternate English dubs over there, I think someone there misread I Shenlon or Shinron as Li, like a capital L, and so over there he's called Li Shenron instead of I Shinron. So even in English,
hold on, I have to ask you because now this is coming to mind because about the Chinese to Japanese, because the Dragon Balls have their Chinese names, like Shishinshu, etc.
Right.
Okay, Ten Shinhan.
Yes.
I swear to God, the first time I heard Chaozu speak in Japanese in one of the movies, I think it was the 9th movie, when he talks about Tensan, he goes, Tensan! I'm like, wait, is he saying Tien?
No.
Is that where? So, no, but that's the thing. It's like, okay, where the hell does the I come from? Like, what is that? Like, where did the I come from?
There is like how we have Chinese food in America that's not actually Chinese food?
Yes.
So in Japan, there is what they call a Chinese food dish. I don't even want to even attempt to pronounce it, but it has Tien, which it's based on this food dish. And that's kind of where it comes from. And I'm not describing it well enough, but someone at Funimation, whoever at the time, was probably trying to approximate it or didn't like the full name of Ten Shinhan, or just, I mean, there are so many decisions.
That's the thing. They call him in in the old like ocean dub of like the first couple seasons. There's
Correct.
a part where Bulma's looking at that photograph of like all of them
and
together.
Lunch is there.
Yeah, and Lunch is in it, and just like, who the hell is that? And she's like, oh, Tien Shinhan, and I'm like, well, she says that. It's like one of the earliest episodes. She calls him Tien Shinhan. So clearly they still had it there, and I figured, okay, well, maybe they're just going to go by the nickname that Chaozu calls him by. But I still was like, where does that I come from? It was very strange.
Where does that I come from is kind of like my biggest question for Funimation in 1996 to 1998.
Well, now it's just like, okay, it is what it is. It's like, I couldn't, when they went back and they fixed like everything with Kai, it's like, I couldn't blame them for like, all right, we can't just magically change Krillin to Kudidin.
They're not going to say Saiyan. They're not going to say Ten Shinhan instead of Tien.
Yeah,
right, exactly.
I think the nicest one that we got, thank God, was like, we got rid of Guru.
Yes, that was pretty good.
They just call him. They just called him the Grand Elder, which is like, okay, I'll take that, sure, whatever.
Right.
I think like especially for the video games, there's sometimes where it's like, okay, we have to like stick with this naming convention for like the purpose of like organizing data or whatever. But in the show, it's kind of a different sort of execution of it. So it's like, okay, whatever, you know.
And a lot of that just ties into what does Funimation have trademarked and copyrighted, and that's just their style guide. That is what it is over here. And luckily, over in the translation for the DVDs for the Japanese track, it's all proper and appropriate.
Yeah, and also I don't think there's anything that's ever been like that, really like that confusing as to like who's who or what's what or, you know, what is this or whatever for the most part.
I'm not coming up with anything offhand, but one of the things we were talking about earlier with Ascended, where they just use that word for literally every stage and every sub-stage.
Well, no, especially at the time, for sure. Well, okay, you know what? The thing is, and I think I said this also on a podcast at some point, you and I, we were talking about when the Buu Kai episodes were starting. Mm-hmm. By the time they got to the Buu episodes of the like original dub of DBZ, it seemed, because I know those episodes like by heart, and I've been watching the Japanese ones really kind of for the first time, really, of the Kai episodes.
Yeah, they're
and
all
I'm
right.
seeing that like what the it's like the I mean, like there's like a stupid joke thrown in like once in a while, but even then it was like much less obnoxious than the Mondo Cool era. Like, well, Mondo Cool guys, all that nonsense.
I mean, there's so much going on there. I mean, Barry Watson was still there, but Terry Clayson wasn't still rewriting scripts from up in Canada. Steve Simmons, who you mentioned earlier, was already working for them doing scripts for for DVDs, so who knows how much of that was influencing their dub rewriting. The ties were already changing there, Funimation, as much as Watson was pushing back against them, so it makes sense.
But by the time they got to the Buu episodes, the script adaptation and the script supervisor in charge was much stronger, and it seemed like they had a fuller grasp of like what the fuck was going on and like what they were doing, from kind of the way that Sabat has often described it. But no, it's just kind of interesting because it seems like now that's kind of, and plus all just the stuff that they've done that they're like, look to now, they're kind of a pillar in the anime world. There's a standard that they have to keep, and it's like, okay, well, if we make an exception for Dragon Ball just because it was this way, it's weird, So thankfully, the conventions have kind of changed it much more for the better. Where like we're all kind of as you said about the Battle of Gods movie, we're all experiencing the same thing basically. There's no more like, no, that wasn't really what this was in the original, or oh, the dub said it this way, or oh, this and that. There's no more of that anymore, really, for the most part.
Yeah, for the most part. There's still a couple lines here and there. I think I was just answering someone's question earlier. Is the line in the Battle of Gods dub that Beerus says he told Frieza to destroy Planet Vegeta? Because I've seen people saying that. I'm like, he doesn't say that in Japanese.
I'd have to go back and I don't think so. I'd have to go back and spot check that because I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it could be mishearing, but I've gone on record. Yeah. I think the Battle of Gods dub script was a little too loose for my liking, but hey, them's the breaks.
You just didn't like that. For God's sake, why would you fly 2 feet over to blah, 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 whatever?
Well, there's that.
Shut up, Mike.
There are plenty of other things too. And my answer for that would be, my retort to the retort would be, that movie was already fucking hysterical. Like, it was a Toriyama flick through and through. I don't want someone's interpretation of Toriyama's humor on top of Toriyama's humor. Like, let it be.
Fair enough. But that's a whole nother subject of like, how many liberties is it okay to take for that sort of thing. I would say just overall, the fact that just like we have something like as good, as high quality as that now, I think is. Oh,
can you?
Helpful.
You didn't know me in 1999, but hearing stories about Vegito EX in 1999, can you imagine me voluntarily going to a movie theater to watch a Funimation English dub production like that? Like, it wouldn't even cross my mind.
I'm incredibly excited. Well, okay, this is kind of looping back because we've been going on a major tangent now with all this geeky shit. Sorry, everybody, but hope you've enjoyed it somewhat. It's because of also, beyond just the lyrics and just being open to like the existence of the Japanese version and this intrigue, it's because of a lot of the stuff that you guys opened me up to, especially with the podcast that you've been doing for God, how many years now? Like 7-8 years?
We started in November 2005. So later this year will be our 10th year. Yeah. That's just the podcast.
God.
The site goes back to, like I said, January 98.
Yeah, and I learned so much of that, that I've incorporated into like, some of my videos about the voiceover stuff in the show and things like that. And yeah, like it's done so much to help. And now like anybody that talks to me about DBZ, like I feel the need to politely educate them on things sometimes.
Isn't it awful? Like you can't converse with people anymore.
No.
I'm so sorry.
For the most part, no, it's fine. For the most part, it's still the basic consensus of we're watching the same show. It is what it is.
Agreed.
We all love completely. Dragon Ball, So
yep.
Yeah, because like honestly, even back in the day when with the old dub being bad, it's like and the liberties taken, the show still was the show. Because like you could argue like the Ocean episodes that even the hardcore like. People who like the Japanese is the best. Like they liked the Ocean dub with like everybody back in the day. And there were even more liberties taken with that with like the fucking I can see their parachutes. You just wait till my arm grows back.
But Chris, the way I would describe it and the way I have described it is the overall story is the same. And there's always a chance for two people to experience and interpret art in different ways. Like if you and I looked at a painting, we might come away with different things. That being said, if we both watched the Japanese version of Gohan transforming against Cell, we're going to hear the exact same thing with the exact same tone, that music, the way it comes in, and we might feel differently about it, but we're going to experience the same thing. And that could not be said at the time for Funimation's English dub, even though, yes, Gohan still transformed and it was still mostly for the exact same reasons. And then he still went on a rampage and he still got very evil and he had to like tone himself, like all that, yes, was the same. But the way I described it was when I'm describing my love of that scene and my experience with that scene, I'm explaining kind of a different scene than the 9-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 12-year-old, whatever, at that time watching it dubbed for the first time. And I'm comfortable saying this now, that's not to take away from their experience. It was a great experience. It was an awesome show that they loved and they watched as a show. Awesome. We are now in a world where I know if someone watched an episode of Kai and I watched an episode of Kai, doesn't really matter what language we watched it in.
Yep.
Like almost worldwide now. And that's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm really glad now that we do have that. And, because even just, it's exciting for me to just go back and watch it again. And I mean, kind of looking ahead with this new movie, because of the stuff that I learned from the Japanese version, and now, even adding to that with fixing stuff with Kai, Frieza has become my favorite of like the big three, villains over the course of all of Z, to where like, oh my God, a whole movie about where Frieza comes back and he's the main antagonist. I am so fucking hyped for that. I cannot wait to watch this,
Again, can you imagine 1999 Vegito EX being excited to go to a theater to listen to English dubbed Frieza?
Thank God for Christopher Ayers. Jesus Christ.
Bow down, kissing shoes for all involved in decision and casting. Thank you.
I'll say too, I remember that infamous, infamous only because of the fucking article you wrote with having it as a note of when I met Sabbath for the first time, and we went to go get dinner. We were at Anime Milwaukee, and I was talking about, because Kai, I think, was just announced. They were doing the dub, and the recording was the early days of it, and Linda Young was announced to be coming back for Frieza, and I told
she was
him,
announced,
yeah, and she recorded it for the first episode. The laugh is still in there, and I said to him, like, with no offense towards her, people on the internet really want Frieza to be voiced by a guy, and he's like, Linda's very sweet, she tries really hard. I didn't cast her as Frieza. And so we were talking about that, and I, just off the cuff, I was like, oh, J. Michael Tatum. And he was like, I could see that, or maybe Christopher Ayers. And I was like, oh my God. And, lo and behold, months pass, and that's exactly what we got. And thank Christ, because just, oh God, the Frieza fight now is like, it's watchable both for it being not 700 episodes, and also for it being, just in both languages now, very well performed by, the incredible Ryusei Nakao, who I'm looking forward to hearing going apeshit on Resurrection F. And feasibly Chris Ayers coming back for when they dub it over the summer.
Look here, Kirb, you invited me on to talk about the early days of Dragon Ball fandom, and we've somehow cycled around from there to the present and all back around, and pretty much the entire time it's been comparing Funimation's English dub then and now to the Japanese version. And I think that's totally okay, and I think that underscores what the early days of Dragon Ball Z fandom, for at least me, what they were like, because we had this slow dub coming out, and Funimation went through all these business changes with losing Saban as their distributor, having to take it in-house, those early productions like Sleeping Princess Devil's Castle in 1998, and then the season 3 in 99. So my fandom at the time was comparing the English dub and the Japanese version. That's not what Dragon Ball Z fandom is defined as anymore, but it truly did define those early days for me.
Yeah, it's why I'm very grateful and thankful that just around the time that I was getting into it, and thankfully to just my open and curious mind, which not everybody who grows up with something and they don't want it to change, they have their precious view of something, they're not always open in the same kind of way, and actually, I think this is a perfect way to end things. I have one more story I want to tell.
Okay.
That I was actually surprised that I didn't tell in a previous one, but I'm really excited about this one. So the very first time I ever got to see Dragon Ball Z in Japanese, Dragon Ball anything in Japanese, there was as I'm sure you probably had stores like this over in Jersey, because Mike and I are both from the East Coast originally. There was this place in Long Island, New York, called Collector's Kingdom, where they had tons of anime shit and manga and all these like figures and toys and things, and they had rentable fan-subbed VHS tapes of every episode of DBZ and every episode of GT and all of the DBZ movies. And so for my birthday one year, at this time, I believe Buu had just shown up and was like wreaking havoc on Cartoon Network. And I said to my friend Jason, who was a big anime fan, and he had watched everything, all that stuff in Japanese, I was like, Jason, I want to see how Dragon Ball everything ends. So for my birthday, he brought in the VHS tape, that like the one that you had, although this one was subtitled, of the last I believe 2 or 3 episodes of GT. So we watched the battle with this villainous white dragon guy who I had no idea anything about whatsoever, show up and, fighting Super Saiyan 4 Goku. And then, he gets, turned back into a kid, and then the big Ultra Spirit Bomb with all the characters everywhere and all this stuff. And then, the wonderful ending that you and I both love dearly from GT. Genuinely, it was a good ending.
Totally.
And interestingly enough, because I think this will intrigue you, so I heard Goku's Japanese voice by, of course, illustrious Masako Nozawa in his Super Saiyan 4 body. That was the first time I ever heard Goku's Japanese voice was through the Super Saiyan 4 design. I heard that, and so I said, okay, with my minimal amount of knowledge of Dragon Ball GT, I know that Goku gets turned back into a kid again, so that's probably his voice when he was a kid, and lo and behold, he turns back into a kid after the transformation wears off. Okay, that makes sense. But then, years passed, and it was I enjoyed it, and then I started trying to find some more episodes. I started buying some of the DVDs that had the Japanese language track on it, and I would hear Goku's voice. By that point, I was just like, okay, I guess they just kept the same actress for him all throughout. Maybe it was the same person for the entire show. Okay, I guess I could understand why they would do it. I must have been like 14. Most people would be like, oh my God, why does Goku sound like a 60-year-old woman? As many people still are to this day, unfortunately. But I happened to be open enough from my first exposure to the Japanese version of the show, maybe because of the way that it was, maybe because I was shown this is the end. Chris, you haven't even seen Buu get defeated yet, and you're seeing the end of everything that just came out in Japan, maybe a year or two prior, fan stuff.
So you went into it like, I know nothing. I am open.
I am open to anything and everything, and then just the whole world was my oyster of this thing that I was already intrigued about enough and learning more and more about with every episode that aired on Cartoon Network, and everything was fresh to me. I had a great time. Then I think another couple years later, I bought all of the quote-unquote Kid Buu saga on VHS, and I watched those, all just in a row, basically. I watched those last 13, 14 episodes in a row one night to see the end of Z, because I was more enthused about seeing the end of Z than GT, of course. So just because of that, and then, with your site and meeting other people on the community, on your forum and everything, and then eventually getting to know you guys, it's I've learned so much about what is still, for different reasons, but still to this day, it's my favorite anime property in the world. So, you
want to talk about definitions of things. I think you explained it without kind of qualifying or naming it in any kind of way. And that's, there was a difference, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not going to make a judgment call on that. When Toonami kicked into high gear and Funimation started season 3 in 1999, you could count on a regular schedule of new material coming. You didn't have to actively seek it out anymore. It became a much more passive thing to be a fan. When I got into the series, that was not possible. So I had to approach everything with an open mind, where it was, I don't even know what I don't know. What could there be? There's this. Awesome. There's this. Awesome. So like you were saying with going into that end of GT, this is this crazy new thing. Who knows what could happen here? And just,
who is that guy? Why does this character look like this? What even is Super Saiyan 4? How does that? What?
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's the sign of not a true fan, because I hate that delineation there of casual fan and true fan. I think it's a different kind of fan. Something clicks in our heads, I must know everything there is to know, and you just seek it out, and it's just this mysterious open, it's a Maka Fushigi Daiboken. It truly is.
It's a mystical adventure. Interestingly enough, too, just to tack one more thing onto that, in the story that I told about the magical DBZ videotape, I had seen those first 2 seasons run over and over, the fight in the middle with the Ginyu Force that just cuts off, and we didn't know what the hell happened after that. Right. I walk into a Target and I see a videotape with Piccolo and a big beefy version of Frieza fighting each other, and I'm just like, holy shit, I need to see what this is immediately. I bring it home, I pop it in, immediately, as a kid with no concept of shit, I'm like, the voices are different, the music is different. I don't fucking care, because I'm watching new episodes of Dragon Ball and they're fighting Frieza. Oh my God. I didn't even have that in my goddamn mind about anything. It did not even occur. And I completely understand when you tell the story, as you often had on your podcast, you pop that in, you were older than me and you had this whole different experience and you're like, is this a joke?
Well, that's the thing. Like,
is this a joke?
I was already running my site for a year and a half at that point. I had already seen further in Japanese, and we had these quotes from Gen Fukunaga, the president and CEO of Funimation at the time, and still now founder, of, we're going to put out uncut videos with the Japanese music. And so it was this, in the world of however old I would have been, 18 at that time, like this betrayal from this company who promised me this one thing. So that just, the knife wound was even deeper there.
We'll be making the minimal amount of edits to One Piece so that it is a pure representation of the Japanese product.
Yeah.
Fuck
exactly.
you. But thank God that one managed to come back in a big way, like by some miracle of God.
Somehow you convinced me to talk about English dubbed Dragon Ball Z for about an hour. I don't know how you did it, but you pulled it out of me, man.
Well, I managed to convince you to do this for me, so that congratulations. This is the longest Kirblog that has ever been, and you are the one who's done it. So
I'm sorry.
You're a landmark. Well, you know what? I hope everybody. I don't know. This is going to be an interesting. I'm really curious about what the response to this one is going to be.
You're curious.
Everybody.
I'm curious. Your audience, me for an hour. What the hell's going to happen?
I mean, listen. I don't care. I do these to do whatever the fuck I want. If people don't like it, then then I guess look forward to the next ones being shorter, because I'm not going to be convincing other people to do this 700 times for me. But I hope everybody out there listened and enjoyed and maybe learned something, got something out of it. If you want to learn more, I would very much highly recommend you go to Kanzenshuu, and I'll have a link in the description as usual, and check out all that stuff. Definitely take a listen to the podcast, which these days have been kind of updating generally whenever you guys get the chance to.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and I think you guys on that same note, I don't know if you want to plug this too early, but you're in the process of kind of starting up a new wiki for as part of the site or something
there's
like that?
so many things. I talk about how much bad documentation there is out there, and it's just one of those things. Like, if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. So we've been playing it for years, and I think we're finally going to do it. Like, we don't start things lightly. It takes us years. I mean, I've been doing the site for 17 years now, so like, I don't mind taking 2 years to do something else. It's not a problem.
Well, at the very least, though, there's lots of specific, like, there's articles, these really interesting, in-depth bits about, this lost animated, short movie thing that tied in with a video game and why it exists. What happened with this weird shit that happened with Dragon Ball Kai's music, and also how it impacted the video game music of other ones by the same composer, and these rumors that, are still long-standing, and why this and this and this. It's like, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you would be like, wow, that's why that was. Oh, I didn't even know. I think it's really cool. I always found it really intriguing. I still do to this day. I would highly recommend any of you guys go out and just explore Kanzenshuu and find all this crazy shit, because you will definitely learn some new things. I guess as we're wrapping things up, Mike, do you have any other stuff that you want to plug, or just in general to mention, I guess?
No, the site, the podcast. You were talking about the rumor guide. If people want to check out one thing in particular, it does not matter what kind of fan you are, where you come from, what language. I guess you gotta read English to be able to absorb the page. But the rumor guide is one of my favorite things that I've ever done for the website. There's general rumors. There's home video, movie rumors, video game rumors. I think the rumor guide is a great encapsulation of the amount of research and fact-checking and documentation that we do, kind of condensed down into fun little tidbits of information. And if you like what you see in the rumor guide, the well is as deep as you want to fall down into.
Yeah, and I guess that's we're gonna wrap things up. So everybody, Jesus Christ, for comments, your early days of Dragon Ball Z fandom is all I can say. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm not taking Kirblog topics just yet. Well, maybe I might be open if somebody has an idea for one, but obviously it'll be DBZ related. I have other ones planned with other guests coming up very soon. Again, in the weeks leading up to, and with the weeks and weekends leading up to the Resurrection of F screening in over here in LA. So look forward to that. Look forward to everything, all more stuff. Let me know also, I guess, in addition, do you like this, as this is the longest Kirblog we've ever had? I've thought about doing longer ones like this before, but it's just technical limitations that prevent me from doing so. So would you like longer ones like these? Do you enjoy having them on as because they're basically podcasts in the background?
It is. I might release some of my own as podcast.
Hey, well, well, if you want. But you're more than welcome to. But yeah, like, please go for it. Let me know your thoughts on that. And yeah, again, share with us your stories and, you know, your early days of Dragon Ball fandom, or, you know, if you've ever had any intrigue of the show, if you're not into the show or whatever. But otherwise, you're going to be in for, you know, much more shit about Dragon Ball. So to all my fans who aren't Dragon Ball fans for the next couple months, I apologize ahead of time. This is going to be boring the shit out of you. But there's lots of other tome content and things coming out soon, like episode 0. So look forward to that. That'll do. Oh, you know what? Hold on. There's one last thing I have to tell you, Mike, before we end.
All right. Tell me.
I mentioned in my show that these characters in Tome called the Net Kings, who are like the creators of the virtual world thing that's in the series, those characters are all specifically based on not people that I knew from the internet, but they're rather based on websites, like personified into characters.
Uh-oh.
And one of the characters that I voiced, named Zeto,
Yep.
is all inspired by the Dragon Ball Z sites that I went to back in the day,
Nice.
including yours. So take some solace in that. Congratulations. That'll do it. That's it. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye. First person in the comment that I said Cyan wrong gets a punch in the face. Bye.
See ya.